Let's continue our math adventure. We know every decimal can be renamed as a fraction, but the challenge happens when we have a repeating decimal. So we are going to follow these 4 steps in order to always change any repeating decimal to a fraction. So let's start with our easiest one. If you take a look at step 1, we always have to set a variable, and I always choose x equal to whatever the repeating pattern is. So when I look at this decimal, I see that that repeating pattern is 0.44444 going on forever. So let's go ahead and let's just start to set up an equation, and I'm going to define my variable x equals that repeating pattern. Now step 2 says, well, if that's the case, then we want to pull out one of those repeating patterns to the left of the decimal point. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to rewrite this, and I want to take this decimal and I want to move it one place value over, which means I'm going to multiply by a power of 10. So when I multiply by that power of 10 and that decimal point moves over, I now have a single 4 to the left of the decimal point. Now I still have that repeating pattern. Didn't disappear. But the second I multiplied by 10, remember, my equation just went out of balance. So I need to pull that equation back into balance by multiplying by 10 on the other side. Now we're back into balance and I have a new equation. My new equation is 10x is equal to 4 4/10 repeating. So step 3 says, well, let's subtract out that repeating pattern. Well, it looks easy on this side because all I have to do is subtract out that repeating pattern. But uh-oh, I just went out of balance again. So I have to subtract out that repeating pattern on the other side of that equal sign. But over here, it just looks like 10x. But this is where we have to go back to the very first step, because remember, I said that x was equal to that repeating pattern. So if I subtracted out the repeating pattern on this side, then all I have to do is subtract out x on that side. They equal the same thing. Well, when I do that, I'm left with 9x on this side, and I've eliminated that repeating pattern, and I'm just left with 4 on that side. Well, I'm not done. I need to get x by itself. And so I'm going to then divide by 9 on both sides so that I can get rid of that 9x and just make it an x. And when I did that, I got a fraction. Now, and I look at that fraction, I always check, is it in lowest terms? And it is. And if you took a calculator and you typed in 4 divided by 9, like magic, it should come out as that repeating pattern. Now, it doesn't happen if we just have a single digit for a repeating pattern. It can also happen if we have a 2-digit repeating pattern. So if I have this repeating pattern of 0.121212 and so forth, again, I'm going to start off by taking x and I'm just going to set it equal to that pattern. Now I'm going to create this equation, x equals 0.12, but it's repeating, so I can't forget that bar notation. Now I need to move that decimal point 2 places over to pull out one of those repeating patterns. Therefore, instead of multiplying by 10, I just multiplied by 100. But I just went out of balance. So what I need to do is I need to pull myself back into balance by multiplying by 100 on the other side. So in the end, my equation becomes 100x is equal to 12 with the repeating pattern of 1, 2. Well, I need to subtract out that repeating pattern. So I'm just going to go ahead and subtract out the pattern, but I just went out of balance. So I have to do it to the other side, but remember we said x was equal to that. So I'm just going to subtract out a single x. I'm left with 99x equal to 12. I want to get x by itself, so I'm just going to divide by 99. Therefore, x equals 12/99. Check it with your calculator. Type in 12 divided by 99, and you'll magically come out with that pattern. We might even have a 3-digit pattern. Well, it's the same process regardless of the pattern. So we're going to start off and we're going to set x equal to that pattern. Now I'm going to create an equation. And instead of multiplying by 10 or 100, I'm going to multiply by 1,000. But whatever I do on one side, I have to do on the other. So in the end, I'm left with 1,000x on this side, and I'm left with 897. Now remember, that pattern is still there. 897 repeating. I want to get rid of that repeating pattern, so I subtract it out. But whatever I do on one side, I have to do on the other. Remember, x is equal to that, so I'm going to subtract out an x. I'm left with 999x on that side and 897 on this side. But I still am not done. I got to get x by itself. So I'm going to divide by 999 on both sides just to keep it balanced. And we're left with 897 over 999. Take your calculator, check it. It's like magic. It works every single time. So what I want you to do is I want you to try this out. You could even make up your own pattern if you want. And if you always follow these steps, you should be able to change any repeating decimal to a fraction. Good luck.